Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride, like Frankenstein himself, is kind of a patchwork of genres and styles. At times it's a horror movie and a musical with lavish dance numbers. It's a crime drama and a love story akin to Sid and Nancy or Bonnie and Clyde. It's avant-garde and strangely traditional, referencing familiar Frankenstein tropes. So let's talk about it. Hey, I'm Mike. I studied film. I work in TV, and if you love movies as much as I do, hit that subscribe button and get notified when new content's posted. Truth be told, I'm on a bit of a Jessie Buckley kick lately. I loved her in Hamnet so much that I went back and watched her in Beast, where she delivers another great performance. She's all but a shoo-in for Best Actress at this year's Academy Awards. Jessie Buckley is clearly having a moment. She stars in Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride alongside Christian Bale as Frankenstein, Jake Gyllenhaal, Annette Bening, and Penelope Cruz. That's some cast. The production is stellar. There are moments that will literally take your breath away, and others that'll make you recoil and look away from the screen. Jessie Buckley as the Bride is as iconic as Elsa Lanchester was in the original 1935 Bride of Frankenstein film, and props to the production team for not copying the original Bride's streak of white hair. The black spray on Buckley's cheek is just as iconic and takes the character into new territory. It even becomes a thing in the film that young girls try and emulate. And check it out, Jessie Buckley's makeup in The Bride is eerily similar to her makeup in Beast. There was so much in The Bride to like, and for some reason I didn't connect with it in the way I thought I would. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, and Maggie Gyllenhaal does a fantastic job as director, but I think it's the script, also written by Gyllenhaal, that weighs the whole thing down. So let's back up. There's not going to be any spoilers here, but we have to go back to the original 1935 Bride of Frankenstein starring Boris Karloff to really explain this. Wait a minute, should we go back even further? Mary Shelley never actually wrote a Bride of Frankenstein novel. The premise for a Bride of Frankenstein movie came off the popularity of the 1931 Boris Karloff movie Frankenstein and Universal's desire to make a sequel. 1935's Bride of Frankenstein derived from a subplot within Mary Shelley's Frankenstein itself, where Henry Frankenstein is nearly blackmailed into creating a bride for his monster. The 1935 film begins with Mary Shelley telling the audience that she has one more story to tell. In the original 1935 film, Elsa Lanchester plays both Shelley and the Bride. The same is true for Gyllenhaal's Bride. Jessie Buckley plays both the ghost of Mary Shelley and the Bride. That's why her accent fluctuates between Chicago gin joint dame and Gothic English scribe. It seems as if Shelley's ghost possesses a young girl from Chicago who crosses the wrong mob boss and ends up dead. Meanwhile, Frankenstein, or the monster, now about 113 years old, finds a new mad scientist, played by Annette Bening, to make him a bride. And lo and behold, who do they select? The young girl that already happens to be possessed by the ghost of Mary Shelley. Okay, so we're on shaky ground from the jump, but the production is good enough that I was willing to overlook some hokey backstory. At its core, the legend, the story of Frankenstein, is about a monster who wants to be civilized. He wants to be human. He wants a normal life. And the Bride is the opposite. She's a woman who is created to be betrothed to a monster and exerts her free will. The original Bride rejects the monster. It's no surprise then that Gyllenhaal decided to set her Bride film in 1936, just a year after the original Bride of Frankenstein movie was released and in a post-suffragette era. The feminist themes run deep in this film. The doctor who reinvigorates the bride is a woman, played by Annette Bening. Penelope Cruz, the detective investigating the case, is a woman fighting for her position as the lead detective on a case over her male counterpart. And of course, the bride is reanimated and comes back to a life without society's repressive shackles on her. She is living her life to the fullest and encourages the shy Frank to do the same. There are so many lines and scenes that deal with gender roles that for me it got a little distracting. If a film is going to make a point like that, it doesn't need to be played out in the actions of the characters and reiterated in the dialogue and mentioned specifically by other characters just to make sure we aren't missing the point. We get the point. In fact, one of the main set pieces is in a dark alley transvestite club. I took this to be their safe space, free from gender roles and judgment, where people could be who they wanted to be, not who they were born as or as their creator made them to be. They could just be themselves. The original Bride of Frankenstein was kind of a feminist film too, in its own way. A bunch of men create a bride for their monster of a friend and expect the two to live happily ever after without ever asking her what she wants. In the 1935 version, the bride rejects the monster because she believes they should remain dead. But seriously, they brought her back to life and expect her to marry that guy? Yeah, right. In 2026's The Bride, Frank and the bride actually have a pretty good relationship. They're like Bonnie and Clyde or Sid and Nancy, off on a crime spree. What's interesting about The Bride is that Gyllenhaal is clearly inspired by the campy Frankenstein portrayals in productions like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but those types of films are rarely done with such a high budget and played by such an accomplished cast. And it has to be mentioned that The Bride also serves as Gyllenhaal's love letter to cinema. Within The Bride, we see Frank and his love of movies. He wants to be the handsome actor he sees on screen, played by Maggie's brother, Jake. But there are also scenes in a drive-in, and they find their way into a 3D movie of all places. In 1936? I'm only mentioning it because I always associated 3D movies with the 50s, but I looked it up. 3D movies have been around since the late 1800s. I'm not so sure about those red and blue glasses, though. I really liked the style of The Bride, even though it didn't know what it wanted to be. Maybe I liked it because it didn't know what it wanted to be. I'm not sure. Like I said, there are lavish dance numbers and grotesque horror scenes. There are tender moments alongside absolute cruelty. The film itself, like Frankenstein, is a jigsaw puzzle of genres and ideas. It references the greats like Boris Karloff and stays true to the passion of Mary Shelley's novel, but also reminds us of campy Frankenstein productions that have become an integral part of the Frankenstein lore. There's even a nod to Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein with Christian Bale performing a dance number to Puttin' on the Ritz. Anyway, what I'm saying is I like most of Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. I think you should be ready for a frenetic zigzag, though. Those are my thoughts on Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. I'd love to read yours in the comments below. Film is about community. I'm Mike, and I love movies.